It seems that every console had its very own Japanese counterpart. You had the Famicom to the NES, the Super Famicom to the Super Nintendo, the Sega Mega Drive to the Sega Genesis, and in typical fashion, a lot of those titles were released exclusively only to Japan. And this title is a prime example. It's called Pulseman. This one is quite unique as it's not entirely an import. Instead, it's a reproduction of a Japanese game on a repurposed cart. It's funny to think that this cart was actually a different game until somebody changed the ROM. So let's check out a not so imported game. What do you get when you combine Sonic the Hedgehog with Mega Man? You get this game, Pulseman. A very unique and interesting game for the Sega Mega Drive. Developed by Game Freak and published by Sega, Pulseman is a single-player 2D action platformer released in 1994. It never was released to the US in cartridge form, but was able to be purchased on the Sega channel. Then eventually was available on the Wii in 2009 for North American players. It was originally called Spark during development, but was changed shortly after it was announced. The story goes like this. During the 21st century, a computer scientist named Doc Yoshiyama creates an advanced AI called Sea Life, who's able to think and feel actual emotion. He eventually falls in love with his creation and wants to be closer to her. So like any sane human who has an engineering degree in computers, he uploads himself digitally and makes love to her. This is accomplished by him combining his DNA with her program core. Ew. The end result was our hero, Pulseman. Eventually, Pulseman's father, Yoshiyama, goes insane. I figured he was already insane after, he fucked a computer. And becomes the evil Doc Waruyama, who's now returned to the human world with his group called the Galaxy Gang to spread his seed. Cyber terrorism all over the world. And of course, our hero Pulseman has to stop his cyber pervert father. I think I saw that on an episode of Jerry Springer once. Now that we have development and storyline out of the way, we only have one thing left to do. Pop this son of a bitch in and play it. Don't adjust your television. This is the actual title screen. You're given a lengthy introduction to the storyline of the game. It even includes a visual of how Pulseman was conceived. Yeah, I prefer the X-rated version. When you hit start, you're sent to a stage select screen. You have a choice between Japan, India, and the USA. After selecting a level, Pulseman is teleported into the stage. And look what we have here. Another game with a big ass sprite. Why do I always get these games? Sprite size aside, it's very well detailed, and in all honesty, the size really isn't a hindrance, but your reaction time to oncoming attacks will be slightly diminished, so you better think fast. Take some time to enjoy the level design. There was a ton of work put into these stages. They're all unique and very pretty to look at, all with their own quirks and challenges. Each level also has a part where Pulseman enters the virtual world and has to navigate through a digital version of the level. Now on to gameplay. Pulseman has the basics, jump and attack, but when he runs uninterrupted for a time, he charges up his special ability. When he is charged up, you can either attack, which sends out an energy ball that'll kill an enemy, or you can hit the A button, which will make Pulseman turn into energy and shoot across the sky to another platform. This is actually the main mechanic of the game, and some levels force you to utilize it. But unfortunately, there is a flaw in this mechanic, which I will explain later. While you're pulse jumping, you can bounce off walls and chain your movements to kind of pinball yourself across the parts of the level. This ability can also double as an attack. You have the basic 3 hits and you're dead rule, but your health meter is also a communicator. As you get hit, the communicator will open up and your companion, named Beatrice, will tell you to be careful, with an actual voice. Yes, there's actual talking in this game. Pulseman will speak during gameplay, saying fun lines like, there are a lot of fun concepts, but that's what they are, just concepts. Because here's where things start losing their luster. Enemy spawns are very abrupt, and with the larger sprite size you already have a delayed reaction time. But that's not solely where the game fails. Instead, there's multiple issues all combining into one game-breaking issue. Hit detection is very iffy. You can't be too far or too close to the enemy. and depending on where you're pushing on the D-pad, Pulseman will do different attacks. But they all have a limited window of effect, and most of the time, you're going to miss your opponent. Another issue is that when you're teleporting, you have to be very careful because you have no control over your movements, and you have a high probability of flying right into a pit for an instant death. There are three main issues with this game: abrupt enemy spawns with an already diminished reaction time, which forces you to slow down, very iffy hit detection that ruins your flow, and a very unreliable special ability that in the long run gets you into more trouble than is useful, and there are segments that require you to use it. So what does that all mean in the end? Unfortunately, it means you can't use your special ability. It's very difficult to run long enough to charge, and when you do, well, what's the point? You really don't need the pulse jump to navigate levels. So really, you base a game off of a mechanic that really isn't useful, making this entire game just a plain Jane side-scrolling platformer. As for the controls, they're stiff. There are moments during platforming segments where you just can't control your movements, and it feels like you're more or less fighting with Pulseman to move, opposed to actually controlling him. It does excel in music and sound though. Everything is clear except for the voices. They can be somewhat bit crushed, and I swear Pulseman says, "Oh shit," when he pulse jumps. You can decide for yourself, but as for the rest of it all, everything audio-wise is above average. The final verdict is not bad, but it's not good. The concept of Mega Man and Sonic being combined is a fun idea, but it was executed not poorly, just wasn't executed properly. Instead, it came out mediocre and just falls short of being a hidden gem. I'm not going to say play it or don't play it. There's no harm in doing either. And that's my review of Pulseman for the Mega Drive. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, give me a like and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.